Hey everyone, Hunter here for another competitive bio. This time we're going over Greninja, the ninja Pokemon. First we'll be going over Greninja's typing. Greninja is a water dark type, but since Greninja actually has an ability to change his typing to pretty much anything you want, his typing actually doesn't matter too much. However, since he is a dark type, he does have a huge weakness to priority fighting moves, because even though Greninja is a fast Pokemon, Mach Punch from one of the more powerful Pokemon could one-hit KO it. His dark typing does give him pretty good resistances though to Ghost and Dark moves, as well as being completely immune to Psychic. And Water gives him resistance to Fire, Steel, Water, and Ice. Otherwise, it has weaknesses to Bug, Grass, Electric, and Fairy, as well as the aforementioned fighting issue. Greninja has an ability that can change his typing to pretty much anything you want, so actually his weaknesses don't matter too much. We'll be going over that ability in a little bit. Next we'll be going over Greninja's base stats. So as we can see, Greninja doesn't actually have the best defensive stats. That 72 HP, Greninja's going to go down to a 1 or 2 hit KO most of the time, especially with physical hits with that 67 defense, and that 71 special defense isn't looking too well either for him. As for its offensive stats, on the other hand, that 95 attack is looking really great. Sure, it's not as high as its 103 special attack. However, you could definitely have a physical build on a Greninja or a mostly special build, and then surprise your opponent when you go in for a physical attack later on. As for that 122 speed, that's really fast, guys. If you put some speed EVs into Greninja, he's going to outspeed most Pokemon in tier right now. And that goes hand in hand with his attacking stats. Greninja isn't a Pokemon that's going to be out in the field too long, but in the mid to late game, having Greninja out there to hit hard and hopefully get some 1 or 2 hit KOs against some of your opponent's Pokemon, with his excellent type coverage, can be great to fit the void in your team. Greninja is really good at taking care of some of the Pokemon that your team might be particularly weak to. So like I said, he might not be out there too long, but hopefully long enough to do his job. As for his abilities, Greninja has 2 abilities, Torrent and Protean. Torrent boosts the user's water-type moves by half if the user is at or under a third HP. Protean, on the other hand, is really great. It changes the user's typing to the type of the move being used, so yeah, you can get stabbed from pretty much any move, and he definitely has the move pool for it. Greninja has access to Scald, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse, Rock Slide, Acrobats, Waterfall, Thief, U-Turn, Night Slash, Gunk Shot, Power Up Punch, Shadow Sneak, Low Kick, and Map Block. Yeah, that's a lot of great moves, and he gets stabbed from each of those. Map Block is an interesting move because instead of actually doing damage like the rest of them, it actually puts up sort of a double protect for Greninja and the Pokemon it's paired with. However, you can only use Map Block the first turn that Greninja is out. If you use something like Shadow Sneak at first and then try Map Block the second turn, Map Block won't work. It's also worth noting that Map Block actually doesn't get priority like Protect does. However, since Greninja is so fast, a lot of the times Map Block is going to be going first. So it's going to be Map Block, so you set up the double protect, and the opponent's Pokemon won't be able to do anything. It's also worth noting that Map Block doesn't stop status moves, so status moves will still be able to go through Map Block. So keep that in mind when you're predicting. So it will stop something like a Flamethrower or something, but he won't be able to stop Will-O-Wisp or something. He will get Will-O-Wisp, so definitely keep that in mind when you're predicting. Since this competitive bio series I started is still relatively new, I'm not entirely sure what I want to call this last section of the episode. Since Greninja is such a flexible Pokemon, it feels wrong to suggest sets for it like I did for Caesar last time. Like I said earlier, Greninja is a Pokemon that's there to fit the void in your team. It's there to do its job and just that. For example, this is a Greninja set that I ran on a team for a while. This team had particular weakness to Heatran, so I made sure to include Low Kick on there, which would one-hit most of the VGC sets that we see out there for Heatran nowadays. And it definitely two-hit it if it survives a second turn, or allowed another Pokemon to come in and finish the job, but since it was mostly seen in the mid to late game, he was able to do his job more times than not. I included some other coverage moves on there, such as Scald, which would combat a lot of popular Pokemon that we see nowadays, even the very popular Landorus, which would normally land a one-hit KO on a lot of the VGC Landoruses that we were seeing at the time. Although a better choice probably would have been Ice Beam instead, because that would have also taken care of a lot of threats from Salamence and Thundurus, and so on. But because this set worked perfectly for me on that team at that time, it might not be the best set for you and your team. Popular strategy that I like to experiment with using Map Block to allow your partner Pokemon to set up turn 1. It definitely helps a lot of Pokemon that need a little setting up to be a huge force in the field. I think it might be a good idea to check out some of the ways people have used Greninja in the past. Greninja seemed like it was going to be a huge force in the 2015 metagame, but he's since lost his popularity, but there are definitely some noteworthy examples of Greninja on teams. Alberto Lara, 2-time regional champion, brought a Greninja which landed him into top cut at the US Nationals. It ended up being a really great asset to him with that huge boost from Life Orb, especially when paired up with his Salamence. He brought it mostly because his team was particularly weak to Zapdos and Thundurus, and while Greninja is crippled by Thundurus' Thunder Wave, Thundurus would suffer from one-hit KOs against his Ice Beam. He opted for Grass Knot for a great coverage move and Low Kick, which in hindsight really should have been Hidden Power Earth, since Low Kick really didn't do much for him, and matchups against Aegislash were really his downfall at Nationals. Jeremy Rodrigues, who ended up in the Philadelphia Regionals top cut, ran an interesting and somewhat unconventional Greninja set. Rodrigues was running a Pledge team that focused on having Greninja use Water Pledge, while his Venusaur used Grass Pledge. Now, the Pledge moves are interesting because while those two moves are used together, each one will do twice the damage normally would, but the main point is that it would set up a swamp on the opponent's side of the field, which meant that their Pokemon's speed was cut in half. So in a complicated way, Greninja was used as speed control as well as just being a heavy hitter. He gave his Greninja Ice Beam because his team was really weak to Salamence and Garchomp, and he decided to go with Taunt to stop some of the Trick Room teams and Pokemon that would spam Thunder Wave. And lastly, Ty powers Greninja. He brought it to the 2014 Australian Nationals, and it ended up bringing him into Top Cut. As one of the few special attackers on his team, he brought it instead of Garchomp he was running previously. The Rock Slide definitely helped when his team didn't have specific answers to Pokemon like Mega Lucario, Pyroar, and Delphox, which was surprisingly popular in Australia at the time. Map Lock helped against a lot of his opponent's spread moves, and it helped him buy just enough time to set up some much needed Trick Rooms. And Dark Pulse helped against his team's huge Ghost type weakness. I want to thank everyone for watching. This is sort of an experimental series, and being said, I'm definitely still polishing it and experimenting with it. I'm definitely open to criticism and any advice on improvements that you would have on the show. I know last time I probably should have gone into a bit more research before giving suggested sets for Caesar, so I try to change things around this time by delving into what really makes Greninja a viable Pokemon, and how some of the top players have run him before. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it gave you a bit of insight and some advice on how to run Greninja on your team. Thanks for watching, and take care.